All right, good afternoon, everybody. Matt Coles, National Sales Manager with First Funding USA. Thank you very much for joining the Non-Del Influencer Podcast. Today's guest, we have JD Cutri from Plaza Home Mortgage. Super happy to have him here. JD, say hello to everybody.
How's it going, everyone? Thanks for having me, Matt.
Oh, you're welcome, bud, man. So, JD, I've known you for a long time now. What are we talking about? 12, 13 years at this point?
Yeah, yep.
Why don't you tell everybody a little bit about the evolution of how you got into the industry and why you found a passion for non-del?
Yeah, it's a cool story for sure. Just interned at Plaza starting as a sophomore in college, really, in the shipping room, and just utilizing the copy machine was a majority of my day. But kind of worked my way. Each Plaza had a great internship program that you kind of develop different skills and join different departments. And it actually, my second year, I worked for the National Correspondent Division at Plaza, and just worked with their sales team and inside sales team, and it was good experience, just learning the knowledge and of what they do on as an investor instead of the wholesale lender aspect of it. And then my third year, I went out to our Boston branch and worked with a guy named Scott Compton, who was truly a mentor for me, and his passion was non-del. He had a great relationship with Jim Dunkerley at First Funding, and once that it meshed real well, and he taught me a lot about it. And a couple years later, when I graduated, I became full-time at as a sales assistant for our number one account executive out for the Boston branch. And that's, kind of how I met you and Nate and Jim Dunkerley at these trade shows and whatnot. And then became an AE shortly after becoming a sales assistant. So when I was hired at Plaza, it was really cool to have the opportunity to just focus on the non-del channel, right? So that was kind of my role when I was recruited to be an AE, is to focus just on as the correspondent lenders, and that's about 95% of my book of business today.
So what made you fall, what's the passion that you have with that book of business? Because you've always been super passionate about it. And why do you, as an account executive, kind of segment that out as your book of business? Like what's leading you to that decision?
Yeah, I see an industry trend, really, just, kind of working with, you at First Funding and seeing how busy and how many people are reaching out to you on a consistent basis, right? Of wanting to utilize their own funds. But I think it's a great opportunity for brokers to look at. One, obviously, is the pricing autonomy, right? And what they have to, price loans and be competitive. The second thing that I think is really cool is the branding opportunity for them to utilize their name on all the docs and whatnot, right? They don't know who Plaza is, right? They're never seen, the borrower doesn't, right? They never see Plaza as the investor until we ultimately buy the loan. So I think that gives a really unique perspective on the business working as an investor, instead of just the lender.
What about that?
Right?
Yeah, what's that little tip or trick that you always share with them about the non-QM on the warehouse facility for the non-del side?
Yeah, I love just saying, when I go into offices, at Plaza, we do allow them to bank non-QM DSCR loans, but I always like to tell them and the loan officers, brand it as your own self-employment program or your own investment program, right? ABC Mortgage self-employment program or ABC Mortgage investment program. They don't know who Plaza is. You guys are the lender. You guys have the opportunity to brand and market that way, right? That's you're putting your big boy pants on and you're utilizing your funds. So utilize the marketing too aspect of it. But what's really grown to me, I do like the B2B, going in, creating relationships with the owners of these companies, and it's been a huge success so far.
Do you change hats when you're talking from like the owner of the company has one agenda in mind, right? Which probably is with regards to profitability and keeping LOs, recruiting, and growing the business. Whereas maybe an operations team might be a little bit more focused on, hey, what's the nuts and bolts of how I get a loan done through any typical or any standard investor. And then you also have the sales team. So you kind of almost have to wear three hats, right?
Yeah, no, definitely. That's a really good point. And it's actually something that I've developed in the years when I do onboard a customer. I've learned from my mistakes, right? You kind of had that one hat and imagining all under one company, right? And you're kind of throwing them all these different things. But what I've developed is a 4-phase process of onboarding. Phase 1 is getting with the owners of the company, right? Just ownership, and going through a checklist to make sure all the loose ends are tied, right? Like margins and their pricing engines are on point with my system, right? And so we go through a checklist with just ownership, like you said, because they're worried about their profits at the end of the day when we buy the loan. The second is the onboarding call with the operations staff, right? Getting their processors or operations managers to sit down and go from submission to purchase and every step in between.
What job titles are you bringing in on your side? Not particularly who, but what are the job titles that you're having from your investor side to bring into that conversation?
I bring in, great point, myself, my CSR, who's going to be their main point of contact, and my closing manager, who runs our non-del correspondent team. If we draw the docs, and she runs, if we draw the docs, our doc drawers, as well as our purchase review team. So it's good to have those faces on there to, make sure that they understand and can relate or know the point of contact, really, right?
Right.
So once I go through that process with the ops team from submission to purchase, so they're comfortable with our system and our process, I then go to the third phase, and that is a call of just about product of what is available to the sales team, the loan officers, right? Who's selling the product. And like I said, great partnership with First Funding. For the most part, unless you're not FHA approved, you could bank every program at Plaza Home Mortgage.
Right.
If it's not QM, DSCR, second liens, renovation loans, even, you have that opportunity. And I want to make sure that the sales team knows that, right? When they see a low FICO Govy or a bank statement loan, they know a face to call Plaza. And I think that's been a really successful transition for me in onboarding customers. And then ultimately the fourth phase that I like to do is do an in-person meeting, right? Meet these people, right? Grow that. I still believe it's a relationship business, right? So be there, be a face, a friendly face that they can feel comfortable with and call you for years to come.
Yeah, I just think like as a wholesale rep, right? That's where I started, was a wholesale representative, typically focuses on the LO level and probably the processors, right? But when you're working in a non-del world, I love the fact that you separate it out between the three stages, right? Because you got different agendas essentially with each group, and you want to make sure that each one is getting the resolution that they want. If I'm a business owner and I made the move from broker to banker, it's probably pretty scary, right? I've been a banker, I've been a broker for so long now. I'm moving to banking. I don't understand how it works. I don't want to take on any more risk than I have to. And from a operations standpoint, like, hey, this sounds like it's more work to me. And then from a sales team perspective, like, how do I price a loan, right? So there's all of these different things that you have to worry about as an account executive, and you do a great job of segmenting it out. From an investor perspective, right? Yeah. One of the things that we always talk about over here at First Funding is, listen, when you make the move to non-del, you're starting to get like less. It gets a little less. It just gets a little stickier with your relationship, I guess is the best way to say it, right?
Yeah.
And wholesale mortgage broker might have 25, 35, 45 accounts, where the investors, they're picking maybe like, 3 to 5 to maybe even 7, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully run the gamut of all the pricing. Take Plaza out of it. What do you suggest that AEs do to make sure that they are differentiating themselves and their company when they're chosen as an investor from a new broker to banker relationship?
Yeah, that's a good question. I would say be knowledgeable of the channel, right?
Right. Because you've crossed paths with wholesale AEs that just don't know what they're selling against sometimes, right?
It's a different language, right? You know, they want to be known as a lender, not a broker, right? They're taking the risk per se. So know the language and understand the ins and outs of the channel, right? The purchasing part, the margins on the back end, you know, certain things that it really is. Treat them as you know, that luxury lender, because
Yeah.
they are taking the risk at the end of the day.
You really want to start building that language, right? Of having themselves refer to themselves as lenders and not so much as brokers.
Right.
Knowing
And then refer to us as investors, not lenders. Right.
Right.
That I
Absolutely.
see that all the time with my customers. I'm like, no, we're buying the loans. We're not funding them for you.
Right. So you're super passionate about prospecting new accounts.
Yeah.
Take me a little bit through the process of, I'm an AE, I want to dive more into the non-del space. Where do I start prospecting?
Yeah. Personally, it's been a real blessing, and just to be able to go to conferences throughout my career. And I think my biggest success has been my referral partners, to be honest, or my vendor partners, because it hasn't been more as a prospecting, but a referral basis for me, right? If I can trust them, they can trust me. It's a mutual relationship. I think that's the success of prospecting, right?
What are 3 vendors, again, without naming any names, what are 3 vendors that an account executive should look to?
Yeah, I think obviously the warehouse bank. We've done a lot of success with AMCs in the past,
Right.
because that's the biggest thing with, you know, being able to become a non-del. They can choose their own AMC, right, and have a relationship with an AMC. So that's huge. Even MI companies, MI companies, if even though they're non-delegated, they still have the opportunity to utilize their own MI, right?
Yeah.
So
And then compliance partners has obviously probably been one of our biggest ones, right? You and I discovered that one kind of like organically, because we kept getting asked, like, hey, how do I put together policies and procedures? And we're 2 dumb sales guys. We don't know what we're doing. So
exactly.
let's get the compliance people to handle that for you.
Yeah, it's super important, you know, when you make that transition from broker to banker, to have all the literature and documentation updated to be the lender, right? Not just the broker. So the compliance companies have been huge help, because it just keeps all parties safe at the end of the transaction, right? Investor, lender, and borrower. So kudos to them for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So take me through, you get them onboarded and you get them up and running with you. What's the value add that you're bringing 6 months into a relationship, maybe a year into a relationship? What are you doing to make sure that they continue to leverage you as a lender? What's the new sauce that you're bringing on a regular basis?
Yeah, I just, I keep repeating it, but a couple things we pride ourselves, and I want to make sure that, people know, especially in a tough market that we're in today, and loans become tougher, in a high rate environment. And you see, I've seen anything from the low FICO cash outs, right, that are harder loans, that I like to pride myself on my underwriting communication and make sure that they know they have the opportunity to pick up a phone and work deals out, or pick up the phone, call me, and work deals out, right? I think Plaza has always prided ourselves on our product portfolio, and it feels like we're releasing a new product every 4 to 6 months, right? And I think that's what's really cool. And with that being said, is telling them that we're never competing with them and never going after the real estate agents or never going after their borrowers, because we don't have any retail presence at Plaza. And I think just understanding the knowledge of, like we talked about, the channel and teaching them the opportunities of being a lender, such as the branding and whatnot, can really help educate people that are coming into the business, right? And I'm seeing really cool younger companies continue to hire younger, salespeople out of college and educating them. And, I want to be that resource for them as they grow upon their careers.
Right. I think one of the things that's kind of like a misnomer, right? I think maybe in our sales roles at mortgage companies sometimes is, hey, I only want to go and target current non-Del relationships, right?
Right.
Like, hey, I see in all the data that they're closing in their own name. I want to go sell to them as a non-Del. Where I think the actual grass really is grown, really is where it's like, hey, there's a pretty big broker shop, and someone's going to spark that fire about them saying, hey, have you thought about making that move from broker to banker? I know you've had that conversation before. It doesn't lead to immediate results. I'm sure it's taken a long time for you to convert some people. Take me through that process.
Yeah, no,
about what your follow-up is and everything like that.
Yeah, it's years. Like I've had a couple that's been years, right? And you kind of you assume that it's going to be a 10 to 15 loan officer shop to make that transition, maybe more, just because but I've also seen a lot of success with the one-man shop, right? Just because they know how to maintain a consistent pipeline, and might as well utilize the branding and pricing autonomy and utilize their own funds to, maybe gain a little more profit, right?
So, well, you and I have done a presentation or two together in the past, and we always talk about, like, listen, if you're looking for best pricing, that's got to probably be number 5 or 6 on the priority list, right?
Yeah.
Making that move from broker to banker is not immediate profitability. It's about the branding aspect of it. But when you talk about prospecting, how do you balance your day between prospecting and maintaining the pipeline that you have to work on? Like, what's your day-to-day look like on that side of it?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of coming out of the COVID phase that we're in, dedicating a couple days on the road now, or organizing a sales trip, which I do each month, and with a vendor partner, right? Is, get out of behind the desk, go on the road, prospect a zip code or a town, or, Southern California, Arizona, Vegas, and do 2 to 3 days on the road with a vendor partner. Has really helped me grow my book, and find new accounts, and it gets you away from the computer and the just being responsive, not being proactive. Right. And I think that's really important for a salesperson in my role. You got to be proactive in this business, and especially in this market, because if you're not, and if you don't have it all ready, people say our rates are going to go down or whatnot. If you don't have that platform ready, it's going to be troubling.
I love the idea of going out in the field with another person, just because it's daunting, right? Sometimes to walk into an office by yourself, and sometimes the conversation can turn negative really quick. Like, woe is me, rates are high, there's no inventory or whatever. If you come in with a vendor or someone else to kind of speak to something different than what you're normally speaking about, just brings the energy up and just makes it a much better sell. And I know I've always talked with you about getting the yes, knowing what your yes is before you go into a meeting, and as soon as you get it, shut down the meeting, say thank you very much, and get going. You're not going in looking for 15 yeses. You're looking for 1 or 2 yeses and say thank you very much for the time, and then step away from that office, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Right. So what's next for you? I mean, what's the outlook for you? Do you have a master plan for 2024 about how many non-del accounts you're looking to add, what you're looking to grow? What's next for you in your organization of the year as we look forward to the second half of 2024?
Yeah, it's really like I kind of mentioned is getting that platform at my company ready, right, to be a one of the top investors in the market because we have the product, we have the system in place, we purchase quick, right? Be that go-to investor and make sure, like I mentioned earlier, on board properly. So then when things start getting busier, everything's set in place. They feel comfortable working with Plaza and working with me as their liaison, right? Pretty much between the company and my company. They're the non-del and my company. So I'm really excited to grow the channel within our company. I think we do a lot of good things at Plaza, and I'm just excited to work with my vendor partners and everyone. And I'm very bullish for an exciting end of 2024 into 2025.
I think that now is the time. If you are a broker who's thought about moving to banker at any point, do it now while there is some free time and you're not stretched at your capacity with so many originations falling in from the roofs. Because guess what's going to end up happening when it does turn into a little bit of a refinance market again? People are going to have to get thin to win, right? And
Right.
the bankers are going to be able to do that, and offer the ability to shift on a dime so that they can really start to win some deals and shift their focus to get some of that refinance business.
You bring a good point up. We always talk about, do people remember turn times in 2020, 2021?
Yeah.
That's the other autonomy that we didn't really bring up, but you kind of have that flexibility to do it on yourself, right? You're the lender, so
Yeah.
that's a good reminder as well.
Yeah, no, it's a great reminder, and there's services, like DocuTech can deliver some great solutions if you want to bring docs in-house.
Yeah.
Or if you want to bring anything in-house, there's some great solutions out there that you can really provide. All right, JD, always appreciate a couple minutes with you.
Awesome.
Thanks for the opportunity, and we'll catch up again soon. And we'll look forward to the next Non-Del Influencer podcast. Thanks, everybody.